Hi everyone, in this video we are going to understand pricing of application gateway V2 SKUs and measures we can take to reduce and optimize the cost of existing or while you create new application gateway. Now, while creating major factors we need to keep in mind for V2 SKU cost and optimizing, we'll break down the pricing structure which includes fixed cost and capacity unit cost. Major factors to consider for V2 SKU cost. Number one, right sizing. We need to ensure while we create the gateway it matches our application requirements and then choose the right gateway SKU available to us from standard V2 and WAF V2. Number second being leverage autoscaling over manual scaling. So Azure Application Gateway supports autoscaling, which dynamically increase or decrease the number of instances based on traffic demand. And you are just going to use the resources according to your traffic, which can lead to significant cost savings during the lower traffic periods. Also, we can leverage multi-site hosting. This allows you to host multiple web applications on a single gateway, sharing the same front-end IP and listener. So in a single application gateway, we can have multiple sites and it isn't fixed for a single site. With this feature, you can incorporate multiple sites on a single application gateway. Right sizing. So we have two options in V2 SKUs. One is standard V2 and another one is WAF V2. A standard V2 is good for general purpose web applications that require basic security features. A web application firewall V2 SKU is good for enhanced security features for applications that require protection against common web attacks like SQL injection, cross scripting, or attack that overload your resources. So it can help you prevent that. Next, in the leverage auto scaling or manual scaling. So in application gateway we have manual scaling and auto scaling. We need to use wherever possible auto scaling. Auto scaling enables you to use only the capacity units which are required at that particular time and helps us in not over provisioning our resources. So in this site we configure minimum instance count like from 0 instance to 1 instance, and the maximum instance count, that is how much it can scale to, and then it automatically scales up and down according to your traffic demand, ensuring optimal resource utilization. We are going to check all this in practical in Azure later on. So next we have how is the application gateway is priced and how do we get charged. So the two major components of application gateway we have is fixed cost and the capacity unit cost. So the fixed cost comes into picture when the application gateway is provisioned and then is available for processing request, and the capacity unit cost involves the number of capacity units that are either reserved or utilized as required for processing incoming request. When we say one instance means we have 10 capacity units. So you are saying you are using 10 capacity units at that point of time. We'll check more into this in the Azure pricing calculator. Next we have the one capacity unit breakdown. So the second thing in the application gateway which we get cost is the capacity unit, and the one unit involves 2500 persistent connections, and the throughput which we get is 2.22 MB per second throughput, and one capacity unit involves one compute unit. So when we do the total cost, we need to add the fixed cost plus the capacity unit cost which we use for the entire month. So, and given the three parameters in the persistent connection, throughput, and the compute unit, only that parameter is counted at the end which has the highest utilization to calculate the capacity unit for billing purposes. So now let's head over to the pricing calculator and see the pricing in detail. So to go from the start, choose Azure pricing calculator. And in the search products, search for application gateway. And in this page, in the explore pricing option, choose the region according to you and the currency. I'll choose India. So you can see if I deploy the application gateway standard version, I get 20 per hour, and for WAF it's around 37, nearby double the amount of standard, and the single capacity unit get costed around 0.6700 rupees and 1 rupees for WAF. Another component which is involved in the gateway pricing is the data transfer inbound. Whatever data is going into Azure data center is free, and for the outbound data you need to open up this page and then you can check the pricing for the data transfers. And now let's go back to the calculator and let's choose any region. I'll choose Central India. For the tier we are going to choose standard V2 for now. So for the 1 month cost for the fixed monthly usage for standard V2 we have $204 and for one capacity is equal to one compute unit. So we can just check it directly by selecting one. Cost you around $5.84. If I change to 10, so you can see the change in amount. And the outbound data transfer, you can see when the application gateway is created, and from the metrics you can get this data and use it to calculate your cost. Now if we change the tier to WAF V2, we can see the change in the fixed cost of gateway increased to around $160. Also we can see the change in the capacity unit of the WAF tier. It is double the amount of the standard V2. So this is how you can calculate the cost and use it to estimate which you will incur. Now for this testing purposes, let's create an application gateway from the scratch and see what things we need to configure for the gateway. Alright, so for the resource group, I'll create a new test AG and the application gateway name. Gateway region, I'll choose Central India. Here I will use standard V2. Earlier version of the application gateway is deprecated and you won't be able to create them. They will soon retire them from the Azure as well. So I'll go with standard. For the auto scaling, I'll choose no for now, meaning it will be manual. I'll change it later on when it's created. Instance count, I will choose 1. Availability zone, I'll choose zone 1. This option will allow you to deploy your application gateway in multiple components, meaning if one zone goes down or data center goes down, it will be up and running if you choose multiple zones. HTTP2, I'll choose disabled, and the IP address IPv4 only. For the VNet part, I'll create new application gateway VNet. Okay, next front ends. So when we create the application gateway, we get option of public, private and both. You can't create a private application gateway alone. You need to have a public gateway first and then you can enable the private. You will get this error. So I'll click on public or I'll click on both if I want the public and the private. I'll stick to the public for now. I'll choose add new application gateway public IP. Okay, and next backend. For the application gateway, add a backend pool. Name application gateway backend pool. I'll click add. Next configuration. So I'll add one. Rule 1. Priority. So I'm just going to use random names because I'm just going to use it for making understand the pricing only, not the working. Add backend target, backend setting, add backend pool, add next tag and next review and create. So let's click on create and wait while it's being created. It will take around 5-10 minutes. So while it's being created, let's go to the Microsoft document, which will help us in understanding the entire cost and how every component revolves around it. Let's go to application gateway, choose the first one, and under the heading of concepts you will see an option of understanding pricing. Choose this one. In this tutorial we are going to see only for V2 SKUs. So we'll scroll down to this heading V2 SKUs. So as we saw earlier, the V2 involves two pricing components, fixed cost and the capacity unit cost. This one comes into picture when our application gateway is provisioned, and this cost also involves the public IP, which is the front end, and the next component, which is the capacity unit cost, you get charged when more traffic start hitting your application gateway. Your capacity unit start being utilizing, and as your capacity unit utilization increases, your cost also increases. At the end of the month, when you get the cost, it is the addition of the fixed cost plus the capacity unit cost. So a single capacity unit involves three parameters which we saw earlier. The any parameter with the highest utilization among three is used to calculate for the billing purposes. If you scroll down, we can see that one instance count is equal to 10 capacity unit. To make this sense, let's go to the application gateway and see if it's provisioned. Alright, so it's deployed. Let's go to the gateway. Now expand this and we'll go to configuration, where we can change the tier and the capacity type from manual to auto scaling. So in here, one instance, meaning one instance is equal to your 10 capacity units. If I change it to 5. 50 capacity units will be available for the incoming traffic to process them. So it's very vital to choose this number carefully, because if we over provision this, we are going to get charged without any usage. So now let's go back to this document and let's scroll below. We'll see some examples wherein the Microsoft has given some assumptions and simulated the pricing. So every example will be based on the East US region pricing. So the first component, which is the fixed cost, and they have differentiated with the V2 SKUs for the standard V2 and the WAF V2. So the standard V2 will cost you around $0.246 and the WAF V2 will cost you around $0.443. And keep in mind this cost is around per hour. So we need to multiply this value with 730, which will then become a 1 month usage. Then there is variable cost. Variable cost in the application gateway includes the capacity unit. While we were checking this calculator page, it involves the fixed gateway cost, which is being shown by monthly. If we choose by hours, it's 730. If we choose by days, it's 31, and then month. So for the East US region pricing, it shows us around 1 capacity unit, which is equal to $.0008, and for WAF V2 it is around $.0144. There is also additional charge which is for outbound data transfer. If you need to check these values, you need to go to this link and then it will show you all the cost associated with the data transfers. You can see in the calculator as well. If you have the numbers per gigabytes or terabytes, you can just put up that value and then can see what it will cost you. Now back in the document, we can scroll below and see one example for manual scaling. So it says in the first example, if you have provisioned a standard V2 application gateway with manual scaling set to 8 instances, as I told earlier, 1 instance is equal to 10 capacity unit. 8 instance will be 80 capacity units for the entire month, and it says during this time it receives an average of 88 MB per second data transfer. So now to calculate the cost for this, we'll break down the components one by one. So 1 capacity unit can handle, as we saw earlier. So you can see 1 capacity unit has 2500 persistent connections, 2.2 MB per second throughput, and the 1 compute unit. So 1 capacity unit can handle 2.22 Mbps throughput, and in this example it received an average of 88.8 MB per second data transfer. So we'll divide this value by 2.22 and this comes around 40 capacity units. So to handle this request, our application gateway needs to have 4 instances. In the example, it said the manual scaling is set to 8. So this value was here, and so in the next we can see pre-provisioned capacity units is equal to 8, and 8 instance multiplied by 10 is equal to 80. So since 80 is greater than 40, 80 capacity units was already deployed to handle the request. So there were no more capacity units were required. It was already able to handle the request easily. So now to finally calculate this value, we'll use the fixed price, and its per hour usage value is this number. We'll multiply by this 730 hours, which becomes $179.58, and then we have variable cost. The hourly price for the 1 capacity unit is this, and we'll multiply this by 8 instances, and then for 8 is equal to 80. We'll multiply this value by 730, which becomes this value. Now for the calculation of the total cost, we can just add this value, and then the entire cost will be $646.78. So in the diagram you can see there is an application gateway and 8 instances were already deployed in the manual scaling. So 1 instance is 10 capacity unit. So this orange round circle indicates the capacity unit, and box is the instance. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 instances and 80 capacity units. If we check the same scenario in the pricing calculator, we can choose this value with 80 and change the region also to East US. So you can see it's the same value of $467.2 and $467.2. So in the calculator we don't choose the instance, we just get an option for the capacity unit. So 1 instance is equal to 10. So we'll just use the 80 to measure the cost. Now let's go back to the document and scroll down for another example. So next example states that manual scaling with traffic going beyond provisioned capacity. So earlier capacity was already enough to handle the traffic. Now that capacity is going to increase than the instances which we have already deployed. So in this case we have only 3 instances for the entire month, and it received an average of 88.8 MB per second data transfer. So similarly, one CU can handle 2.22 throughput, and in this case it received 88.8 MB per second, so which comes out to be 40. The manual capacity unit was 3 instances, and meaning it was in this value. So 30 capacity units was deployed to handle the request, and it received an average of 40, which is greater than the deployed instances. So you can see that 10 capacity units were utilized more than the deployed instances, and in the manual scaling, the additional capacity units can only be used if free capacity is available with each instance, meaning one instance has 10 capacity units, but sometimes in high traffic it can go up to 11 and 13, depends upon the free capacity of the instance. So to again calculate the cost, the fixed price we get the $179, variable cost which include the hourly price for one capacity unit, then 3 instances which we already deployed, and the 10 additional capacity units were also utilized. We will get charged for that also. So that comes up this value, and we will add this. The total cost we incurred is for 13. So suppose only 3 instances was deployed and only 7 additional capacity units were made available to handle the traffic. In this scenario, the application gateway would be under scaled and could potentially lead to increase in latency or request being dropped. And to calculate this price in the variable cost, because only 7 capacity units were made available for utilization, and we can then later on do the math with the total cost. So in the diagram we can see, though one instance has 10 capacity units, depending upon the instance utilization or additional CU is available with that instance, it can increase that number from 10 capacity units to more. Like in this case, this instance gave around 1 more unit, similar in this one, and in this case it gave around 3 capacity units more. So this is how this works under manual scaling. Now if we go to auto scaling, so let's go for the application gateway and change it to auto scale. I'll choose 0 minimum instance count and maximum instance count to 2 and save. Now in the document you can see another example, and this will include for auto scaling. So it says if you have provisioned a WAF V2 with auto scaling enabled and set the minimum instance count to 6 for the entire month, meaning this value will be the 60 capacity units will be made available every time and will get charged for this number. Remember, if you have less load on the application gateway, choose to give this value to 0 or to 1 or 2, because increasing this instance count will also increase your cost. Later on in this video we'll cover this section as well, but first let's understand this example. So it says we have 6 instance count for the entire month. Next, the request load caused the WAF instance to scale out and utilize 65 capacity units, scale out of 5 capacity units. 60 capacity units were already there because of 6 instance, and 65 capacity units were utilized. So now if calculate this price, we'll get the hourly price for the WAF V2 instance is this value. We multiply by 730, we get $323, and for the variable cost, the hourly price is this value. We multiply it by the 65 capacity units which were used, and we multiply it by 730. We get around $683, and then the total cost will be the fixed price and plus the variable cost. So in this scenario we'll get costed around $1006. So in the diagram you can see we have 6 instances already deployed, meaning 60 capacity units were already there to handle the traffic, and 5 capacity units were used more. So the 2 additional capacity units were made available in the earlier instance, and 1 also, and the 2 left out were made available to the auto scaled instance. So you can see in this example, we are not getting charged for the entire instance. We will get charged for only the 2 capacity units who were made available to use. So this is the benefit of the auto scaling option. You get charged only for what you use, and when the traffic gets reduced, it automatically gets removed from the application gateway. So now to check the real scenario and how can we check the cost of the existing application gateway to see if it's being utilized to its full potential. To check this, let's go to the Azure portal and see how can we calculate the cost and see if it's being fully utilized. So in the first example, we'll take the manual scaling and see if it's provisioned apt and it's being utilized. So you can see in this example we have 7 instance count, meaning 70 capacity units are there to handle the request. Similarly, if we go to the Azure pricing calculator, and for the WAF V2, if we choose for 7 instance we have 70 capacity unit, we'll choose the 4 compute unit because 1 capacity unit is equal to 1 compute unit. So you can see for 70 capacity units we get charged around $735. And now to see how many capacity units is being utilized, we'll go to the metrics of the chosen application gateway. So we'll choose the metric of current capacity unit. So 1 instance is equal to 10 capacity unit. In this example, for the last 7 days, we'll go to metrics and we'll choose the time range for the last 30 days. So you can see in here the max, it was utilizing 9 for the last 7 days, and if we change it for 30, the average value comes around 4.5. So in the whiteboard we saw earlier 7 instances were deployed manually. 7 instance is equal to 70 capacity unit. So for 30 days it's utilizing around 4.5 capacity unit, and if we go check for last 7 days, max 9 capacity units. So whenever we check the value for last 30 days and you get an average of around, in this case we are getting around 4.5 something, so always double this amount, that is your maximum capacity units which is being utilized. So in this case it's 4.5, so let's take 9 or 10 capacity units which were maximum utilized. So in the whiteboard we can see 10 capacity unit being utilized max is equal to 1 instance. So you can see only 1 instance is being utilized, and we are paying for 70 capacity units, which is a lot more if you have an instance deployed and that is being not utilized to its full. So in this case there is needed only for 10 capacity units, and we would get charged around $105.12. We can also choose 22 to have the sufficient resources already deployed to handle the traffic, but it was over provisioned. We were paying around $735 and we could easily save around $500 by correcting the auto scaling. So we can go to the configuration and we can choose the instance count to 2 instead of 7, and we'll just pay around $200 instead of $700. Now in the next example we'll choose another option wherein we have enabled the application gateway auto scaling. So in the next example you can see we have auto scaling enabled, and it's a WAF V2 SKU. Minimum instance count is 2 and the maximum instance count is 10. So let's go again to the metric. Again we need to search for current capacity units. First let's just check for last 7 days. You can see the max it is utilizing its 2.5 capacity units, and if we change the time to last 30 days you can see we are getting an average of around 1.7. so always double the amount, and that is the number you need for the capacity units which is utilized by your application gateway. So in this case it will be around like 3 capacity units. So the best option we need to choose here is the 1 instance count instead of 2. So as you saw earlier, 2 instances were deployed in this case, which is 20 capacity units, and total CU which were being utilized were 3, which can be handled by 1 instance easily. So we can just reduce the number from 2 to 1 in the minimum instance count, and that will help you in the cost of the next month bill. Also, if you want to see how many capacity units you have deployed, like in this case the instance is 2, and if we scroll down to the metric side, 2 instance count is equal to 20 CUs. We can search fixed billable capacity units. We can see the 20 capacity units we have already deployed, and we'll get charged constantly even if it's not being utilized. Similarly for the 7 capacity units which we saw earlier, if we search for billable capacity units, you can see 70 will be there, and we get charged for this number even if you don't use these units. Also check for how much impact it makes just to decrease from 20 to 10 CUs, meaning from 2 instance to 1 instance. 2 instance will cost you around $210, but if you decrease 1 instance, and it will be like a decrease in $100 cost. So these are all the measures you can take while you deploy the application gateway. You can choose the correct SKU, you can choose the scaling from manual to the auto scaling, and you can choose to, if your applications are small or medium sized, you can choose to have multiple sites in a single application gateway. All these factors can significantly decrease the cost and optimize metrics like fixed billable capacity units, and the current capacity units can help you with understanding the price of your existing application gateway. And you can see whatever values you have defined in the configuration side, the minimum instance count and the maximum instance count, if it's being utilized properly, you can use these metrics to check the usage and configure your application gateway accordingly. So this is all for the understanding application gateway pricing and checking existing application gateway to right size and optimize the cost. I will attach the important document in the video link, so please check it out for more detailed information from Microsoft. This is all for this video, and see you in the next one.